Chapter 4, Chpt Immunology, 7th edition, page 105, Receptors and Signaling Cytokines and Chemokines. I think you're going to like this chapter because there's a lot of it that I'm not going to stress over you knowing the intimate details. Know that interleukins are secreted and they can be signal transducers. They can work in autocrine or paracrine ways. They can affect themselves or other cells. They have the ability to change the activation of different cells that they come into contact with, and that there's a bunch of them. They can also act as chemoattractants for different areas. So learn what an endocrine effect, what a paracrine effect, and what an autocrine effect is. That's in figure 4-1. The basic properties of cytokines, you can read through that section really quickly. One of the problems with studying them is that they can be pleiotropic, they can be redundant, they can have synergistic effects, and they can be antagonistic, as well as signaling other cascades to occur. So when you read through the last paragraph on page 107, at the top of the page, it starts, cytokines exhibit the attributes of pleiotropy and redundancy. Think about that for a minute and try to understand how hard it would be to study these molecules and what they do. And then just briefly go over some of the rest of the stuff. I don't need you to memorize what each interleukin does. Just know that they can have an effect on cells and that they can work in all of the ways that were described: pleiotropic, antagonistic, cascade induction, etc. So you can just briefly read through, keep going. There are different cytokine families. You can see kind of what the families do, but I don't think you need to memorize that. You can look it up if you need to know it. Keep going. I'm on page 118. Yeah, just breeze through that chapter from page 107 through 118. Just kind of read through it really quickly. Just look it over. I'm not going to ask too many specifics on that. But when we get to interferons, you need to know what interferons are, what they do, and the different types of interferons. So spend quite a bit of time on interferon types, and on the clinical focus box, therapy with interferons. Why? Because if any of you are going into medicine, they use this a lot. And there's lots of interferon therapies that can be used for things like hepatitis, multiple sclerosis, melanomas. You get the idea that they're handy and they do lots of different functions. So I really like the interferons. I remember reading about them when I was in high school. They were just discovering what they do. Then after the interferons, just learn to define the JAK-STAT signaling pathway. That's it. Just learn to define it. You don't really need to know the intimate details of it, but maybe you can give a good definition of it. On page 124, it mentions the word apoptosis. You need to know what apoptosis is versus necrosis. There's a lot of pathways in the rest of this chapter, but you don't need to know them. So that's why I figure you'll like this chapter. There's some on page 133. We'll pick up again in cytokine antagonist. You want to read that a little bit. Cytokine related diseases. So read from page 133, 134, 135, where it's talking about superantigens and all the way through the rest of the chapter. So you want to read that, where it's starts talking about cytokine antagonist on page 133 through the rest of the chapter. I really like the idea of superantigens. If you have questions about any of those terms, you can definitely email me the questions or post them on Blackboard, and I'll do my best to answer the questions.